Sorry, there's something just not quite right at my end. I think it's going now. So good afternoon. Hope everybody's safe and well. Welcome to the Masonic Drop-In Clinic. These are the regular Tuesday afternoon slots. They're becoming very popular at the moment. So it's nice to see so many of you here. A special welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. I know that 3 o'clock on Tuesday isn't the ideal time for some people, but it seems to be working for a good majority. I would just say that I am starting to record these sessions. I do kind of go through them and make sure there's nothing that we wouldn't want to, anybody wouldn't want to see out there. And if a secretary does email me saying, "Oh, I couldn't make the session, do you have a transcript?" That recording is available to them. So that's something to bear in mind if you can't make a session in future. We are contemplating actually making them available to all secretaries, regardless of whether they can attend or not. So it's we'll see that. So if anybody's got any issues with that, just drop me a line as well. As usual, I'm going to take a moment just to run through some of the basic controls for those who are new or less familiar to Zoom or the Zoom platform. So if you're using a PC or Mac, in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a button which either says Gallery View or Speaker View. If you click it, you can focus on the person speaking or see up to 25 people at once. You'll notice, if you do that, a green rectangle around the person who is speaking. In the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the microphone icon. This is where you can mute or unmute yourself. Also at the bottom, you will see buttons labeled Participants and Chat. If you click on the Participants button, you'll see a list of everybody on the chat at the time, and you'll be able to find your name. I think it's normally at the top. And if you hover over that, there'll be an option for more. If you click more, you'll find the option to rename yourself. So you can change your name in the chat, which is useful to do. And if you could also add your lodge as well, that would be very handy, just so we have an idea in terms of where everybody's coming from. If you click the chat button, you'll be able to see if people are asking questions offline, chat along and send me messages and things like that. If you're kind of struggling to get in or want to ask a question but can't raise your hand, or I've missed you somehow, you can just type a question to me and I can see that. If I've missed something as we go along, you can also correct me, which I'm sure that some people will do quite happily. If you, at the bottom of the participant screen, participants list, you'll see 3 dots. If you click on that, you'll see the option to raise hand. Now that's the indication to me that you'd like to ask a question. Thank you, Brian Kendrick, you've got your hand up. It's useful for me because it means that I have to do less flicking through them. So I would encourage you to try and find the raise hand buttons as we go along. But like I say, you can also type questions as in the chat. If you're using a tablet or iPad, the speaker or gallery view option, so you can see one or more people as is your want, is at the top left-hand corner. On a tablet, you can generally see a maximum of 9 people on the gallery view, and you can scroll left and right to see more of the people on the list. If you look at the top right-hand side, you'll see 3 dots, and if you click on those, you get some more options, and then also the participant button. And if you click on that and then click on your name in that, you have the option to rename yourself in that. Very similar, if you're using a smartphone, you can swipe left and right to switch between the speaker and gallery view. And the 3 dots are at the bottom right-hand corner if you wish to rename yourself or join the chat via text. I know we have some people joining us on the phone today, so thank you for those. The benefit of this platform is that you don't have to have an internet connection to join. You can dial in by phone. So if any of you are thinking of using this for your lodge but are worried about some of your members that don't have an internet connection, there is always that option available for them to do as well. You do have to subscribe to the basic premium, the basic Zoom package for that at £14 a month, but it's well worthwhile to be able to use it in your lodge should you wish to. So those are the basic controls. I'm sure you'll find your way around, and I'd encourage you to try and find the raise your hand button option, as it makes my life a little bit easier when it comes to ordering the people who are asking questions. That being said, I will be scrolling through the screens to try and spot people waving at me. So if you do want to ask a question, can't find the raise your hand option, you can physically wave at me, and I'll hopefully spot you relatively quickly. There are a number of you, basically 100 people on the chat at the moment, so please bear with me if it takes a little while to find you. If you're feeling ambitious or playful, you can also select your own virtual background, as some of you have done. The various football stadia or holiday destinations where you wish you were. So please feel free to do those, but it's always quite interesting to see them. In general, I'd ask you to keep yourself muted during it. As much as we'd like to hear people discussing the menu for dinner, it can be a little distracting from the rest of the chat. So if you don't mind, just keeping yourself muted, and then when it comes to asking a question, I'll unmute you, or you can mute yourself and get that. Just a final note to say that I'll generally refer to lodges in this chat, but please don't take that as a slight on chapter by any means. It's easier for me when I'm talking or presenting just to refer to lodges. If anything crops up specifically that's different in chapter than it is in the craft, I will flag it up and identify it. So please, it's not a slight on the chapter. It's just easier from my perspective to talk about lodges all the time, rather than lodges and chapters and secretaries and scribes and masters and first principles and that kind of thing. So please forgive me for that. It's just for my ease as much as anything. So what we're here to do today is obviously there'll be the opportunity for secretaries and scribes to later on to ask kind of administrative questions of things which have been have risen in the lodge during the time. Obviously we're in a unique time at the moment, which is throwing up some interesting questions, and I'm getting phone calls every day with people asking specific questions regarding their installation, election meetings, and also down to what can they do outside of the lodge, and including kind of holding Zoom meetings and other forms of chat discussions, and what our guidance is on things like that. So those questions, by all means, hang around afterwards. But for the first part of the session, I've asked Neil Ward, so we're curating, I know curating is a very strong word for it, we're loosely organising some guest speakers for the beginnings of the session, just to make them a bit more interesting and relevant as we go along through the lockdown period and suspension period. And today the focus is on membership. Obviously, it's a challenging time for membership of lodges and the membership teams at the moment. Stuart Cranich was here talking the other week about the mentoring within the lodge and the importance of maintaining contact with all the lodge members. But Neil Ward is here today to talk about the new members or potential members coming in, looking at the membership pathway, and also just how to keep potential candidates interested during the during the current period. So I'll hand over to Neil now, the Provincial Membership Officer. So hello Neil, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good, good. You're shown as muted, but I can hear you, so that's interesting. So I'll hand over to Neil now and carry on.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me to speak today, and I'm glad to see Stuart Cranich is there somewhere, because I will be calling on him at some point to say a few words as well. So since I took over on the 11th of October 2018, we're now just over 300 candidates and potential inquiries into the scheme. Since the 1st of January this year, we've had 65. Lockdown has been very busy for membership enquiries. We usually find it gets busy at Christmas when the men stop to have time with their families and they have time to think about themselves, what they would like to do. And lockdown has been no different to Christmas. They've been looking at Freemasonry and researching it. So we've had plenty of enquiries. Membership team usually deals with enquiries from men with no Masonic connections whatsoever. So it tends to be a rather longer process from the initial inquiry to initiation, because we have to get to know more about these people than if they're friends or family of a current member. So the use of new and young Masons clubs is also a very important tool to get to know these men in the social settings. And of course, some of the new and young Masons club events include wives and partners. So you get a family feel for the person that's made the inquiry. I'm aware that some of the groups are struggling for candidates. There's not a lot I can do about that as far as the internet inquiries are concerned. Just making sure that the inquiry does go in the right direction to the right place. At the end of the day, though, if the inquiry says, I would like to go to such a Masonic hall, it's better for me, then we have to respect their wishes. There was one guy, he lived somewhere out towards Woolton or somewhere like that, and he asked to join a lodge in the city centre rather than at Woolton, because it meant he could get to the lodge meeting at the right time without having to go all the way to Woolton to get changed and then come back into the city centre. So we have to be flexible. But I am aware that some of the groups are struggling. At the end of the day, we're all membership officers, and that's we'll speak more about that later on when we come to the members pathway, because it's all to do with step 1. Last night I set up a Zoom meeting for nearly 100 people, 65 of which were these candidates that have inquired since the 1st of January. We're all on the suspension of Masonic activities at the moment, and therefore we've got to keep these people interested and answer any questions. So this sort of platform is ideal, where they can all see each other, they can all think, oh, well, I'm not on my own. There's other people my age inquiring to join, and I think it's going to be very useful. I've also invited all the membership officers from the areas with the people that have inquired into that meeting as well, so they get to see their potential candidates as well. And of course, we've had a change in the membership structure as well. We used to have myself at the top, under David Randerson, who's the assistant with the portfolio for membership. That we used was myself, and then there was 4 regional membership officers. We've done away with the regional membership officers, and we've appointed Worship Brother John Lee from the Blackpool area, who is going to be my assistant, and he will liaise with the university schemes and social media, and expand our presence in both those areas. I'm going to share the screen now, Andre. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. You should be able to.
Okay. Now, in the old days, when the inquiry used to come from United Grand Lodge or via the Provincial website, I used to just pass them along to the respective group membership officers, and they would then either waste the time chasing the people up who just submitted an application for a joke to see if they got some sort of response from us, or follow it up if it was a dead keen interest. Now we have the members pathway. I've designed this form that gets sent to them along with an introductory separate email, and it asks all the questions that the group membership officers would ask, such as email address, name, age, date of birth, hobbies and interests, occupation, marital status, and things like that. And then we get down to the crux of the question: do they profess a belief in a God or a greater power? With a bit of explanation up at the top there. We explain about the fees, if they're going to have any problems with the fees. Does their wife or partner know about their application, and are they happy to proceed? Then we ask if they have a criminal conviction, if they've any Masonic connections, and if they've ever been refused membership in the past. Then the usual questions: why do they want to join? What do they think they can offer us? And what we can offer them. So that we get all the answers to that question, and then there's some little videos for them to watch. And then the last section, I thank them, I tell them what's going to happen next. If I'm happy with the answers to the questions, it'll get passed to the group membership officer, and they will take up the running. If I'm not happy with the questions, I go back to them, and then we have a further discussion. And once I'm happy, then the application gets passed down the line. But there's other links for them to view there. We'll point them in the direction of the websites that we would like them to look at, and not all the conspiracy theories that are on the internet that are a load of rubbish. So I'm going to stop sharing now, Andrew.
Okay.
Okay. So as you can see, that's a lot better. It's controlled more centrally with myself, and it saves the group membership officers time in chasing up wasted inquiries, and they can then concentrate their efforts on the genuine inquiries that we send through. Now, I'm going to share screen again now, Andrew.
Okay, just bear with me. Go on then.
Okay, so we've all seen this document. I've got quite a few boxes of these booklets in the garage, if anybody wishes to look at them. But I'm not going to go through all the steps here and now, but I have another one I want to share now, Andrew.
Okay.
There we are. This is the West Lancashire pathway steps, and this has been adorned by some coloured boxes down the side of the pathway, and this is where Stuart Cranage will probably want to jump in at some point. If you can see him waving, Andrew, let me know. So step one is under the ambassador scheme. That usually involves the lodge planning, and this is where I say the lodge are the membership officers. Every member in the lodge membership officers, because step one involves lodge planning. You've got to identify what kind of lodge you are. Are you, you know, like a policeman's lodge, a golfing lodge? Have you got a lot of people that like boats in your lodge? That kind of thing. You're aiming for one particular idea, and then the idea is each member of each lodge then sits down and thinks amongst the family and friends and writes a list of as many people as they think would like to be a mason, would make a good mason, who are not masons, and we work through the list. Now I can hear you all saying, I've been in a long time, I don't have any friends that are not masons anymore. All my friends are masons. There is always one member of your family who's just waiting for you to ask about becoming a Freemason. So do consider it carefully. So then steps 2 to 6 are under the membership team, and that's dealing with the candidates, both from the internet and helping lodges if they need help interviewing candidates. The interview for the candidate, really how many people would like to be interviewed in front of a full lodge committee of old men? It really should be, you know, 3 or 4 at the maximum, with one person just asking all the questions and the others joining in as and when, making it more easy on the interviewee. We did trial steps 5 and 6 in the Leyland group. I caught the tail end of that trial. It was preparing the candidate for the interview, and the secretary would send a very stiff formal letter based on the wordings that it laid down in the member's pathway. Then the interview would take place. The candidate would not be told on the evening whether he'd been successful or not. He would go away, and then he would get a letter to say he had to appear for initiation on such and such a date, and he'd need a black suit, and the cost would be such and such a thing. We lost a couple in Leyland because they didn't realise they were coming for an interview for a job. So that got kicked into touch. So that was something we learned a very good lesson about. Steps 7 to 10 are with the mentoring scheme. So step 7 is preparing for the initiation. We've done the interview. Now between the interview and the initiation, the mentor steps in and starts taking over and sees him through his 3 degrees, then introduces him to the Royal Arch, and then helps retain his membership. If we do leave any, that's step 11, and there's a retrieval system in place in West Lancashire, which is not in my remit, so I'm not going to pass any comment on that. But I'm sure, is Stuart waving, Andrew?
He is, and he's unmuted.
Right.
I'm free to speak if I could just add to that, and you might regret this, guys.
It's not another joke, is it?
No. I think the important thing to emphasise is pathway is there as a piece of guidance. It's not there to say you've got to do this, this is what you must do. Some lodges, some groups are doing fine the way they are, thank you very much. Pathway is there to support you, is there as an aide-memoire to help you along your way. And the important thing is, and this picture that Neil has just put up is very important for me, because as a province, we have seen lots of initiatives. So we've seen ambassador, we've seen membership, we've seen mentoring, we've seen retrieval. These all sit very neatly under the Pathway Initiative, which is a guideline. It's not there saying, this is what you must do, guys. It's there as an aide-memoire to help you. It's a consolidation of all the things that, to be honest, we probably already know anyway. But it's there as a resource, as a consolidation. And I think I'm going to shut up there.
Thank you, Stuart. So, building on from that, I know Phil Gunning, the Deputy Provincial Grand Master, is looking upon Members Pathway as a very important tool to use as we're coming out of this lockdown suspension period. We don't really want to encounter the, we've never done it like that, we don't do it like that brigade. Things have changed. Masonry has moved on, and Masonry, like every other aspect of life, has changed due to the coronavirus, whether you like it or not. Assistance to the younger Masons has come along with the reduction in subscriptions from both Provincial and United Crown Lodge. But we need to look after them Masonically as well, and feed them with the information that they need to make them lifelong Masons. The New and Young Masons Forum, which was held at West Houghton last November, we had 104 in attendance, and we fed their minds with Masonic thoughts and ideas to think about, and it was very well received. I'm going to stop sharing now, Andrew. So, membership and mentoring. As you can tell, because I got Stuart involved in Members Pathway, membership and mentoring, along with learning and development, and to a certain extent publicity, all go hand in hand. There's no grey areas. We all overlap with each other, and we're now working well together at provincial level. The trailer, of course, all the activities with the Masonic trailer have ceased, have been lost for this year, but I'm sure they'll bounce back next year. And I'm very pleased to see that it's growing a healthy competition between the groups to get the provincial trailer, which is a way of selling ourselves. And finally, before I shut up altogether, I'm going to share the screen again, Andrew. When I can find what I'm looking for. Maybe not, maybe not. There's a new booklet out. United Grand Lodge have moved away from the What's It All About booklet. In fact, when Mark Humphreys, who's on the call, and myself went to the New and Young Masons conference at Leicester last year, we had the ability to ask Dr. David Staples a question. I said that there was very little promotional booklets to give out, and I thought the What's It All About booklet was too posh. It was full of hooray Henrys sat down in a wine bar in London. He agreed with me. He told me that all the stock of that booklet at Grand Lodge had been disposed of, and in its place was a booklet called Guiding Principles. Now this booklet, the basic booklets you can see on the United Grand Lodge website if you just Google in United Grand Lodge Guiding Principles, but each province has had their hands on this booklet, and all the pictures and the quotes have been changed to make it provincial, you know, specific to our province, and they're going to be printed, and we're going to get those, and we'll hopefully get those as soon as we can after the lockdown, the suspension, and that is a more modern document, and it's a vast improvement on what we had before. So that's it from me. I'm prepared to take questions. They'll only charge you £5 per question.
I've got the first question is from Paul Smedley from Broadwater Lodge. Paul, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Neil, the pathway flow chart that you showed us made a couple of references to the activities being supported by the provincial membership officer. There was no mention at all on there, as far as I could see, of where the group membership officers came in. Is that not an activity we expect to get involved in?
Yeah, well, in most places where it says provincial membership officer, it would be the group membership officer, supported by myself.
Right, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you do see it being sort of a group activity, certainly. I just wondered why it sort of mentioned specifically the provincial people. And Stuart,
apart from the boxes down the side, apart from the boxes down the side which Stuart added, the rest came up from London. So
right, okay, that's fine. And Stuart, you said about the
we're on spin on it.
Yeah, the pathway being sort of like a shop where you can take the bits that work for your province or the bits that work for your group. So it's sort of you can dip in and out of those and try things and see what works. It's not a hard and fast thing that we need.
No.
I know some lodges I'm in the North Fyle group. Some of our lodges have adopted the pathway and it works very well. A couple of the others, my own included, we tried it and it was sort of felt that the structure as written was a little too formalised, so we sort of relaxed it a bit. So but, I suppose it depends on whatever works well or best for your own particular lodge.
If I may comment on that, and I think I'm unmuted. You are absolutely spot on. It is not a case of one size fits all. Different groups have got different things, and they've got things working well for themselves. And you know, if your group is working well in its recruitment, in its retention, in its membership, in its mentoring, don't change things. We've got a toolkit to enable you guys to help. The important thing is you know that it's there should you need it, but it is not prescriptive. You have not got to. Nobody is saying this is absolutely mandatory and you've got to follow this from step 1 to step 5. So you're absolutely spot on.
Okay, thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Neil, for your responses.
Thank you. Just before we take the next question, what I'll do is I'll just show you the provincial website. If you just bear with me. So this is the new provincial website, and you'll see that it's a lot more focused towards the public as opposed to existing Masons now, and obviously that's for an important reason. We want to appeal to the general public. In terms of finding out about Freemasonry, what they can do is look at the information on what is Freemasonry here. In terms of resources for secretaries and scribes, if you go to the membership and provincial office, so the membership section, read members area. If you go into provincial office, there's a section for new and joining members, and that has all the forms and information for regarding new and joining members on here. So that's the secretary's resource area. You can even download the new forms P here. So there's lots of information on the new website, which is aimed very much at a public-facing website. designed to encourage people to look into joining Masonry, and the information is there for that. So I'd encourage you to look at the Provincial website and direct people towards the Provincial website as well for that information. I'd be interested to know because up here in the north of the province, the top of the province, as we'll call it, just for now, we don't see much of the Provincial trailer, but I'm sure it gets around a bit. How many events does it do a year, Neil?
Well, this year we were looking at there was at least 4 in the Southport area. There was 2 in the Leyland area, one of which, because the Leyland group amalgamated with Chorley group, the Preston group was going to take Penwith and Gala over, and the Chorley and Leyland group looked through somewhere else. The North Fylde group, they had about 3 or 4. Wigan had it one weekend, so it's getting quite popular.
Yeah, so that's at least kind of 12 weekends over the year. So in terms of that being kind of booked up for a lot of the summer, it's probably fair to say that it's in use a lot over the summer, and maybe that if groups are looking to do an event, there's no reason why it couldn't sit outside for a late summer event, or even kind of early spring event if there was something happening in a venue. There's no reason why it couldn't be.
The Leyland group, the Leyland group had it twice for the Christmas light switch on in Leyland. So there's nothing to stop it being used in the winter as well.
I think that's if groups would like to get the trailer to them for them to be used, they can look at that sort of event as well, as opposed to just thinking about kind of the summer fetes, the steam gatherings, and all that kind of thing that may be applicable. I'm just looking through. I can't see anybody waving at me in general. It would be interesting just to throw some questions out there, actually, in terms of the membership pathways, and how, if you have used it and or aware of it and have tried some of the principles in it, what have your experiences been of kind of following it through as a lodge secretary, or how does it work in your lodge? Does anybody want to come in on that? You can unmute yourself and just jump in if you wish to. It's just if you have used it and have got any particular experience.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello there.
Mike Craddock.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Fine. We've used the Pathway project and had a team involved from the very start when we had the first meetings. The Pathway project has been very successful, and I agree with Stuart. You sort of take the bits you want and use it the way that's best for your lodge, and we're still getting people in through it. I was interested in Neil's questions that he used a team of 4, used on a team with a team of 4 to candidates who were coming out from outside Freemasonry and didn't have any contacts. That would be handy. A copy of that would be handy for the lodges that are using the project, just to take bits out of. I don't believe we have a copy, and I don't believe Chris Brown has sent us one, because Chris is our group one, I think, membership.
I can do, Mike. It's in the this whole raft of information, and the interviewing part. There's a whole section on how to interview and how to have an interview panel. So I can forward you all that.
That'd be brilliant. Yeah, can take that forward. The other comment on the Pathway project is It's the follow-up is the challenge, and keeping the interest going. And we've not had too much of a problem with that. We've lost one or two along the way, but we've managed to gain quite a lot of young members. And what people's got to realise, if you do get those young members, it helps a heck of a lot, because they bring a lot of young members with them. And a lot of the people that are now applying, and I've got another 4 when this is lockdown's over, to take into the lodge, are coming out of ones that's come out of the original Pathway project. So that's just of interest there, Andrew.
Thank you, Mike. Got a question from Mike from Saturnian chapter. I'll just unmute your mic. There you go. You want to ask?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Lovely. This is a question for Neil. Obviously, with my interest in the Royal Arch, do we have numbers or a means of knowing the conversion rate from members of the craft that actually go into the Royal Arch? And is that an area that the membership should look at in terms of that conversion rate?
I can supply that information to you on a group by group basis if you want.
Okay.
So that's something that I can help with. But I think it's just bringing in the Royal Arch on this. I think that Neil, I know you kind of mainly deal with recruitment to lodges, but would you like to just muse on how the principles from the membership pathway could be adopted and used for the Royal Arch as well, and for encouraging people, or how the principles of managing the recruitment as opposed to persuading people to come into the Royal Arch?
Right. Well, the one thing I did forget to mention when I was talking about the membership pathway is, if we followed the pathway, Royal Arch is not mentioned until step 9, which is quite a long way down the road. The Provincial Grand Master would prefer that the Royal Arch is mentioned the first time you meet the potential candidate. When you're talking about time commitment, you say, the lodge meets once a month, there's usually practice, etc., etc. And then further down the line, there will be the Holy Royal Arch, and their meet so many times. And that's where he wants it left. He wants the idea of Royal Arch floating, but not rigidly floated about. The conversion between craft and Royal Arch is something I've not really got my teeth into so far. I tend to leave that to the assistants, the provincial grand principals, and things like that. I'm sorry to say that.
We have the statistics in the provincial office, which we provide to the group chairman and the assistants to the provincial grand principals. In fact, they can access that information themselves now because they have access to Adelphi. But it's certainly something that we can help with membership officers or representatives for the chapter in each group. I think a lot of the things which do come up in terms of managing expectations within the membership pathways project and the principles are things which can be easily applied to recruitment into the chapter, even in as much as the interview process, like I said, the management of expectations is something which is we know that when that's well applied in lodges from candidates coming in, that their Masonic career is likely to be longer and stronger from the beginning, because the mentoring process starts effectively pre-initiation. That should be exactly the same case in terms of the Royal Arch as well. The mentoring process doesn't just start, you know, as soon as they're initiated, as soon as they're exalted. It starts from the word go. I can see that Stuart's about to unmute himself. Oh no, he's just reaching for a call. I thought he was going to jump in there, but I think that that's something to bear in mind, that it's worth scribes looking at the membership pathways booklet as well, and not just discarding as something which is only applicable to lodges. I think that a lot of the principles within it can be transferred to chapter and successfully transferred.
Yeah.
Barry,
Can I ask a question?
sorry.
Andrew, Brian Kendall, can I ask a question?
Yes, by all means, go ahead.
It's for Neil Ward, actually. Just a quick one, Neil. A brother-in-law of mine, he wants to join a lodge, or he's being proposed and seconded to join Liverpool Charter Lodge. Now, his proposer, who is his twin brother, is unfortunately in a bad place at the moment. And he's been in hospital for 6 or 7 weeks, and he's sending him home today. How he's not going to make the time it comes to when I have their initiation. So as a proposer, he phoned me up this morning, and where does he stand on that? Where does his brother stand on joining the lodge when his proposer will no longer be with us? Neil.
Andrew, you might be better on.
I had a feeling that was coming my way. Well, if the ballot has already been taken in the lodge, there's no issues whatsoever. I think that there will be people who are known to this chap in the lodge, and he certainly should have been included in the lodge's workings well before the ballot for his initiation. So they may have met with a small interview panel. Presumably, and I say presumably, it doesn't always happen, that he will have been invited to social functions and been involved and met other members of the lodge. I think that, you know, from those, it's equally valid for for any of the people who he has met and engaged with, if the worst should happen, that they would be able to step in and propose him as a member of the lodge. I don't really see an issue. So that's the two scenarios. If the ballot's taken place, there's no issue anyway, because the ballot's taken place. If the ballot hasn't taken place, then really you'd be looking for somebody else in the lodge to step forward and second and propose that brother kind of on the other's behalf, who sadly, of course, wouldn't be there. So I think it's as simple as that, really. And if the proposition has been made, but you haven't had the next regular meeting, phone me up and we could talk about it. That's what I would say on that. Just whilst we're on it, Barry, I can see you've got your hand up. I'll come to you in a second, if you just bear with me. One thing I would say, and this is a point for secretaries in particular, we still get lots of forms that come in from people who have joined through the internet and such ones, and they come in with candidate introduced to the lodge through membership pathways, instead of the proposer and seconder from the lodge filling in the questions on page 3 of the Form P, so part B of the Form P, where there's the 9 questions and the pros answer. We need those to be filled in properly and in full by the proposer and seconder. And realistically, London get a bit nervous if the time known is less than, say, 3 months. Really, when you even think about it, between the time of somebody being introduced to the lodge and the ballot being taken, realistically, 3 months is probably about the minimum that somebody would be known to the lodge anyway. Obviously, if it's a family member, one of them's going to have known them. The seconder may have known them for not very long, but a walk-in candidate as such, what we'd be expecting to see on the Form P is the proposer and seconder filling out the questions correctly and properly in full, and the time known being a kind of minimum of 3 months. that's something that that we still see coming. And I know, Neil, that's something that you reinforce with the group membership officers. But as I've got a bit of a captive audience here, I'll just put that. Barry, I'll come to you now. So you're unmuted, and then I'll come to Ryan after that.
Right. Well, my question is, when you go on your provincial website and you go to our audience, what the form what's output is just a straight dump from a database. Is there any reason why you've not got links to individual lodges' websites so you candidates can look at the actual lodge and it will give them an insight?
There's the links to the groups with in terms of the number of lodges which actually have their own website. It's relatively small. Perhaps that's something that we can talk about afterwards and have a look at that with if you've got a specific case in mind, if that's all right.
Well, it's just because as you're going on about recruitment, the potential candidate might actually want to look at our few lodges' work.
We've been the current the new website has been designed in very much a way to make it as friendly as user friendly as possible for people to find out where where they meet. So right on the word on the front page you can pick kind of a geographical area and go in there, and then it brings up the list of lodges within the group. But then that links back again to the group pages. So the group pages on the website give much flavour in terms of across the board. Yes, they don't focus on a specific lodge, but there's obviously the news stories on there which do bring up information from specific lodges, so people get a kind of feel of the people there, the kind of things that go on. Like I say, if there's a specific question or a specific lodge that you're thinking of, we can talk about that at the end of this conversation, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Ryan, I'll come to you.
Thanks, Andrew. I just wanted to make a couple of comments to endorse what my boss as a GMO, Neil, has said, and also regards to the membership pathway. And this is purely in a personal capacity in terms of how I operate as a GMO. If there's lodges there that aren't using the pathway or aren't even using bits of it, I think, as has been suggested, you can kind of take out the best bits and then the good bits that you want to apply. But as a GMO, when I'm dealing with candidates coming through that particular pipeline, of which I've dealt with several, I know it gives me and at least 2 or 3 of the other GMOs I've spoken to some degree of confidence in recommending a gentleman to a lodge if they are employing some parts of the membership pathway, because it just does give us a little bit more confidence that gentleman, when we pass them over, is going to be looked after and guided through his Masonic journey. So it is worth considering at least some, if not all, of the pathway elements for that reason. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Ryan. Neil, the form, the Google Documents form that you send off to applicants that come in through the website and the other in inverted commas walk-ins, is that something that certainly the content, obviously sharing the link wouldn't be productive, but the content of which and how you express things on that, is that something that we could circulate towards lodges for them to use and for them to send? So even though they've been proposed by somebody within the lodge, it can often be, particularly for newer and younger Masons, it can be awkward to know which questions to ask of somebody on a more, they can introduce Freemasonry and talk about what it means to them, but in terms of asking the questions, Chris, I'll come to you in a second. I can see you waving. Those questions may be useful for secretaries and scribes to be able to ask of potential candidates before they come in. Is that something you can circulate?
Certainly fire them across to you, Andrew. If anybody or anybody wants to get in touch with me directly, I can certainly let them have those questions. It's not a problem. It's a form that I've designed myself, but it does seem to be working. while I was working on my talk this morning, sat at the computer, a inquiry came in for the Wigan area. I sent in the form and with an introductory email, and by the time I finished working on my talk, the form had come back completed satisfactorily. So it does work.
Good. Chris Brown.
Yeah, just to answer Andrew your question, the pathway has a list. It's got a checklist of questions that proposers and seconders can ask candidates prior to them being proposed, and it's got a checklist of making sure that they have asked all the right questions prior to them being proposed. So that's all in the associated documents with the pathway.
Okay, that's useful. I
can send you some of those documents if you want.
Yes, that would be useful, please, Chris. Thank you. Mark has just made a comment about the provincial trailer, about the possibility of it being used, not just for the set piece shows, but also on, high streets and things like that. If it's not in use a weekend for a show or something like that, have we explored using it kind of in town centres and things like that, away from the kind of set piece events?
We haven't, but we have public liability, so there's no problem with the insurance. The problem we have is that if you're taking it to the high street for a Saturday, he's got to be picked up from Barlow, from the place where it's kept at Scanlersdale on a Friday. You've got to keep it till Monday, till you can take it back when they open again. So you've got to have somewhere secure to keep it over the weekend. If you don't like it being left out on the street over the weekend, it's got to be secure. And the only reason we're saying that was it was left on the promenade at Fleetwood one year. The tyres were splashed, graffiti was sprayed all over. It cost a lot to put it right. It's got to be looked after. So that some of the pitfalls of taking it to the high street at the weekend. Of course, you can take it to a supermarket car park if you've got the supermarket's permission to take it there. I have no problem with you taking it, but you do. We've got the insurance. You've got to have somewhere to keep it secure, and you've got to have the either the council or the supermarket's permission to park it up.
And to book it, people contact you, presumably?
The bookings all come through me, yes.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other kind of waving hands. What I will do is just hang around if anybody has any administration questions coming up. One thing that came to me during the week is regarding, so Steve, I see your hand up. I'll come to you in a second, just bear with me. One thing I was asked during the week is regarding the use of Zoom for lodges. And again, I would reiterate that we really, far from being prohibited, it's actually positively encouraged to use it. This or a similar platform. Keep the lodges engaged with the activities. Please, make sure that everybody can access it. We've got people joining us on the phone today who've dialed into it. That's a really important thing for people who don't have an internet connection, and something that should be reiterated for people to join, to be able to use it as and when. You can't hold a meeting on it, a regular lodge meeting or chapter meeting, but you can hold rehearsals and committee meetings. That's not a problem at all. So please encourage it. I can see a couple of hands up, so I'll come to Steve Smith from Symphony Lodge first. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, just a general question.
Sure.
If Provincial Grand Chapter is to go ahead, it looks like Southport is out. Is there any news on where it might be?
No news yet. We're looking at alternative venues at this point in time. Just to put some context to that, you may be or may not be aware that it's been in the news a lot. Southport Theatre and Convention Centre has gone into receivership, so we're investigating other places to hold provincial grand chapter. There's no other news on that at this point in time. Bob from chapter 4072. Do you want to come in?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, you can. There you go. Just a couple of points that I just wanted to raise regards to what has been discussed, in particular with views to membership at a lodge. We have had in my lodge several, well, more than several members coming in over the internet. And I have to say that we've lost about 50% of them. And there is an absolute divide between what I call men and boys, because we've had older brethren, which is sort of 35, say, and upwards, and they retain. Whereas under that age, although they answer all the questions and all the rest of it that are relevant, at the end of the day, they come in, see what's going on, and then just say, oh, and disappear over the horizon, because they have no concept of what masonry really is, or in fact what a cohesive body actually is in life itself. They're too young. So that's one with my lodge. Number two, during the conversation that was going on, it was muted that you interviewed the candidate, and then the secretary wrote out a letter telling him, oh, you can join on the 16th of October, and these are what the fees are going to be. Now, in my lodge and my chapter, the first thing up front, apart from the facts of the guy's capabilities, is how much it's going to cost him. So I think sending out a letter after the event saying you can join then and this is how much it's going to cost is wrong. Then I'm going to come to the chapter when that should be brought up. Whilst I agree with the fact that the chapter should be mentioned in passing, there is a lot to be said for not actually pushing any candidate who's just been raised into chapter. They need to know what's going on in the lodge. And I have, in where I reside for my lodge, actually seen group officers at a raising passing P-forms to the new candidate, which is totally wrong. Candidates need 3-4 years minimum of knowing what's going on in the lodge before they're even approached to go into chapter.
Thank you, Bob. I think there's a couple of points there. Stuart, perhaps you want to come in on the kind of longevity of internet candidates, and particularly with regarding to age. Stuart Cranage, perhaps you can come in on that. You've just muted yourself. Do you want to mute? Hang on. Stuart, you've muted yourself. Can you?
There we go. Hopefully I'm back. First of all, my apologies. I missed part of that because my home phone was ringing away, and so I missed part of it. But the whole concept of people coming in via the internet, which I think was the gist of what I was hearing before I went to get my call, that's a whole new ball game. That really is a whole new ball game. And I think that we've got to set different ground rules down for that. One of the things that I've said, and has worked quite well actually, is that internet enquiries for joining Freemasonry, why don't we do the interview via Zoom? Because the mindset of these people that are inquiring to join Freemasonry via the internet, their mindset is just that. So why don't we do the interview? And before we go any further, because I interrupted and went off and answered the phone call, I might be answering the wrong question here. Am I addressing the right question, which is about people joining via internet? Because I'm afraid I missed a big chunk.
You pretty much answered it. Thank you, Stuart. Neil, do you want to come in on the other points that Bob?
Yeah, my perspective is we've in my lodge has had we initiated one young man and then he brought his friends in. We've not had any problems with them. The problems that we have had with them have all been employment related rather than not grasping the concept. So that was that. As far as we're concerned as membership officers, we only mention in passing at the first time about the Royal Arch, and we'll leave that alone. There was something else that Bob mentioned as well.
Yeah, fees, bringing fees in when those should be mentioned. He was saying that you mentioned in your presentation, which I think was actually something you discarded, was that then the secretary would write to them.
That's right. That was only the secretary writing after the interview was discarded as part of the. He didn't realise they were coming to be interviewed for a job. All that went. They're told on the night whether they've been accepted or not. They're told about the fees on the night, and they're not given a specific date for their initiation on that night. But at least they know they're going to be joining and not having to wait for a letter to appear.
I'm going to put William Birkenhead on the spot now. There you are. You've had 5 seconds warning. Who did come in through the internet. Perhaps, William, you'd just like to just give a couple of thoughts on that. I know I've very much just put you on the spot, but if you want to come in and just maybe say a couple of things about your experiences of the interview process and also the membership team and how it worked. So this is, for people of first-hand experience of the other side of things, so to speak. We can talk about it all the time, but that's not our experience. This is William's experience of it. So over to you, William.
Hello, everybody. Definitely was put on the spot there. No, I just thought I'd put that message in there before because I actually applied via the internet. I sent an email via the website and I was contacted by Neil Ward to come and see him. And we asked the usual questions, and then I was invited to have an interview with the entire lodge. And I think just sitting in there, seeing everybody and doing the interview, it not only boosted my confidence up as a person, I think to have that authentic experience of it, like everybody else had, kind of added to my experience. I didn't see it as a negative. I know it's all right. You can say, let's do it via Zoom because they did it by the internet, so they want to stay by the internet. But I think some people would deserve to have the authentic experience of it all.
I think that's something, just to address one of the points that Bob raised in terms of people. There's no prescriptions here. This is about people taking it at their own pace. Some people may wish to join the Royal Arch, may understand Freemasonry. They may wish to join Royal Arch relatively early. It being introduced when they're raised is appropriate because there's a large part of the third degree which is left hanging by the third, which is only resolved in the Royal Arch, obviously. I think there's a good opportunity there. What I think you're absolutely right, Bob, when you said in terms of it being thrust upon people, it should be there as an option for people to actually be introduced. Sorry, Neil, you want to come in on this, don't
you? Yeah. What William's not telling you is he applied. We took him down to Wellington Park. We showed him round. When he got to the point about how much the fees were, he went white. He went grey, and he backed away. He said he'd have to think about it. And 12 months later, he came back. I've got a different job. I'm on more money. I'm ready for you now. And that's when we took him forward. So he wasn't pushed. The facts were explained to him fully. He took the backward step himself, sorted himself out, and came forward again. And he's going to make one cracking mess, and I tell you.
So,
thank you very much.
Alan Southwood, are you waving, or are you, hang on, sorry, I'll just unmute you. There, you should, oh, hang on. There you are, Alan, you're unmuted now.
Are we undone? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Okay. I'm the group membership officer for Southport, and Neil obviously is my boss. Now, when I deal with people, I also was a secretary of a lodge for 10 years and stepped down in January this year. Now, I've been the group membership officer as well as a secretary for about 2 years on top of the secretary's job. Decided to go in January after 10 years and concentrate more on the group membership situation. When they come to a trailer, we engage with people in the nicest possible way. We don't stand there with leaflets like dummies. We talk to them, engage with them. Now that could be difficult with social distancing in future, so we've got to cross that bridge when we come to it. But what I'm going to say is, when people ask, I usually say, are you a member of a golf club? No. Are you a member of a tennis club? Yes. Do you pay subscriptions? Yes. There's your answer. Because you can then use the situation where it can be anything from £120 in one lodge to £300 and odd pounds in another. So you never actually, you're opening the door when you're talking to them. So you're actually opening that door to a subscription and giving them a bottom figure and giving them a top figure as well. So if that puts people off, you'll soon know about it. You really will know about it. And at the end of the day, we've been very successful, and Neil will tell you, Southport's been very proactive for a number of years. At the end of the day, we find that the candidates we get in are people who don't shift. So they come in and they stay in. And it's all because of the team and talking to the people the way you should do. Engage with them. Don't stand there like dummies with leaflets in your hand, because at the end of the day, they will take a leaflet and you can guarantee within the next 5 minutes it's in the bin down the road. We only let them have the leaflet after we fill the inquiry form in. And it's a tip to any GMO to do that. And that's one of the best ways of doing it. But yes, mention subscriptions, but you don't have to play hard and fast on it. Just give them a ballpark figure at the bottom end and give them a ballpark figure at the top. And if they're not interested, they'll tell you that.
Thank you, Alan. Right, I'm going to. Sorry, John, you're waving. I'll just come into you.
Just a quick point. We've concentrated very much today on new members. 20 years ago, I moved into this area, not just from a different group or province, but actually from a different constitution. And it was very much more my good luck than good management that I happened to meet a fellow Mason, and he pointed me in the right direction of the lodge I joined down here. And having looked at the website, it's a great thing for somebody like me. I live near Grange over Sands, God's waiting room, and a lot of people retire here. And, you know, it's very handy for them to be able to look at the website, find out, oh, there is a lodge, great, I can go along, make myself known and join up. So that's a great improvement in the last 20 years. And I'm very grateful for it.
Thank you, John. Right. Sorry, Neil, go on.
Yeah, we do get inquiries from people that move from other areas. Obviously, they don't get the form to ask them if they believe in God and can they afford it, etc. They're dealt with differently, but we do pass them to the group membership offices, and they deal with them as a candidate and look after them.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Right, we'll wrap up there. Thank you very much to Neil, and thank you very much to the GMOs which are present and have contributed as well. Thank you to everybody that asked a question, and thank you for attending. Next week we have the charity team here. Phil Preston's been joining us today to get a feel of what's going on. Yeah, he was just on the phone. He's just perked up now. So he's coming with the charity team next week. Don't worry, they can't get at you to get any money off you. You're joining virtually, so that's fine. You can relax. But it would be very useful maybe if you could have a word with your charity stewards in your lodge, because they probably would like to come along and pick up some of the things which the charity team are going to talk about. So thank you very much. I am going to hang around just casually if anybody wants to ask any questions from me. But thank you very much to Neil, and I'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
See ya.